I came to understand. Even a great savior carries many pains and failures. And the path of a savior is walked not alone, but alongside countless others. Gyokuro.
Yes?
After Hiyuki, there will be no more Mikos or flaming Sakura.
Throughout 3.3, we've accompanied Hiyuki in our fight for Lairoi and eventually her own story, where we've got to explore the journey of the Miko or Flaming Sakura. While Hiyuki is quite fascinating in her own right, she also does not disappoint as the first Ashinohara character in regards to narrative depth. As the wish-granting Miko, she references and alludes to a lot of symbolism stemming from real Japanese culture, so we'll be having a bit of a foray today into what lies behind her design language, symbolism, moveset, story, and so on. From Senbazuru, Japanese sword arts, the Shinohara, and even why Hiyuki talks so much about flames and burning, even though she is of the glacier element and associated snow, there is a lot of nice little hidden details behind her character that link to real symbolism and culture. So if that piques your interest, make sure you sit back, relax, and be wary that this video will contain some spoilers from the 3.3 story. And with that all out of the way, let's get started. In order to understand nearly everything about Hiyuki's symbolism and design language, we need to talk about a certain flower, the sakura. Besides this flower being venerated for its beauty in Japanese culture, the sakura, which is a flower that only blooms for a week or two before dying, is the critical symbol of an important ideal in Japan, mono no aware. While this is something which is quite difficult to translate, it roughly means appreciating the impermanence of life, acknowledging that life is a series of happenings that would eventually end. The famous scholar Motori Norinaga famously illustrated this concept with the sakura in his poem Shikishima no Uta, where he compares the very spirit of Japan with the transience of the cherry blossom. Like the sakura, which only blooms for 1 or 2 weeks, it is because life is temporary that it is beautiful. One of the greatest themes and dilemmas of Hiyuki's story is the very transience of life. Ironically, as a Miko and resonator that has lived for centuries, her fleeting life is one of her most predominant thoughts. The loss of Hanami, the people that she failed to save, and the eventual conclusion to her segue with her sending off Gyokuro are all linked to the inevitable cycle that makes up the appreciation of mono no aware. In fact, you may even wonder why Hiyuki in her story constantly echoes the motif of the death of winter and the renewal of hope in spring. In an incredibly similar fashion to Jinsu's story and how it utilizes peach blossoms as symbols of the Jingzi, the Chinese solar term that straddles between winter and spring, the sakura is a flower that also does not bloom for all of winter, only beginning to bloom when spring begins. I think the greatest scene that really encompasses all of this is the final showdown between Gyokuro and Hiyuki. After a great transition, we see two worlds. Gyokuro, who was about to be sent off, surrounded by cherry blossoms and sakura petals, with Hiyuki surrounded by spring grass, symbolizing that her life is not yet over, that she has so much more to live. In the midst of it all, Gyokuro's sword divides them both, symbolizing her martial sacrifice and wish that Hiyuki would never share the same fate as her. However, there is something more about the sakura. Why exactly is Hiyuki, the Miko of Flaming Sakura, called as such? As is customary, we need to kind of frame a lot of the specific analysis with Hiyuki into her name, which in Japanese and Chinese we can see translates into crimson snow. While the snow component of her name is visually obvious at first glance since she wields the power of snow and ice, what may be confusing is her constant references to crimson, to flames, to burning. We know that Hiyuki's official title is the Miko of Flaming Sakura, something that's readily apparent if you just talk to her or translate what's written on her red dress, as well as also something that is reflected within her moveset and kit. So why on earth does Hiyuki talk about all of this when fire, flames, and crimson aren't part of her powers and abilities at all? It's actually because the way that we need to view burning and fire, especially within Asian cultures, is not solely as a physical, but also a mental and spiritual concept. Within a lot of Japanese beliefs, such as Buddhism and Shintoism, fire and burning isn't really physical, but more so a form of spiritual purification, essentially burning away impurities to better yourself as a person. We can see this through, for example, Myo, the patron saint of the samurai, who is surrounded by flames meant to burn away evil, earthly desires, and delusion. However, Hiyuki's burning is more so in regard to her own life. We know that the power of the Suzu, while extraordinary, results in the eventual destruction of one's own being, which caused every Miko of Flaming Sakura before her to have disappeared into nothingness. In this vein, there is a perfect Japanese proverb to summarize what flames and burning mean for Hiyuki: Hana wa sakuragi, hito wa bushi, roughly meaning, the greatest flower is a sakura, the greatest man is the warrior. In fact, Hiyuki even indirectly quotes this in one of her ultimate lines, when she is at the peak of using her Suzu powers.
May the Sakura influence burn this self away.
So what does this actually mean? As we discussed in the prior chapter, sakuras are flowers that only bloom for 1 or 2 weeks before falling, which is why they always have had a connotation of impermanence, of the temporal passing nature of life, of the mono no aware. Just like how the sakura is the greatest of flowers in Japanese culture, the Japanese proverb says that a warrior should expend their life, but to burn it out basically, in a grand blaze of glory for a just cause. Besides the fact that there's too many goddamn saviors in the story that don't really care about their own lives, Hiyuki's ability and position as a Miko of Flaming Sakura is deeply ingrained in this self-sacrificing, self-burning ideal. We know that all previous Mikos who took the position of the Flaming Sakura simply disappeared one day in battle, because of their artifact the Suzu using the wielder's own life in exchange for power. This is the true meaning of the Flaming Sakura, how a warrior should burn out their life grandly for a cause, just like how a sakura is beautiful because it is temporary and dies. While honorable, this is also a great curse, one that follows every aspect of Hiyuki's character: her name, her signature weapon, Frostburn, her powers, and paradoxically, it is also something that she wishes to end, as she pledges herself as the eternal Miko, that there should be no Miko of Flaming Sakura after her. If we were to start from the basics of Hiyuki's design, it's functionally impossible not to talk about Mikos, or Shrine Maidens. As priestesses or shamans within Shintoism, Mikos work within shrines and have a variety of roles, such as serving as emissaries between mortals and the divine, or kami, maintaining the shrine, performing the sacred Kagura dance, and more. Besides Hiyuki's attire being characteristically the same red and white design, the world of Wuthering Waves also have Mikos, as the Shinohara uses it, and the divine artifacts known as the legacy talismans as a defense against the lament. This connection between divinity of the centaurs and mortals is one that Hiyuki emblemizes with her position as the Miko of Flaming Sakura, taking on a national duty to not only defend her country but also bear people's wishes, something that requires her to sap her own life force in order to use divine power. Besides this obvious visual connection, however, there are some more interesting references as well. We, for instance, know that Hiyuki's specific sentinel talisman is a Suzu, a bell she wears on her wrist, as being based on real bells that Miko's used during ceremonies and rituals, calling out to divinity, warding away evil, and even attracting positive energy. Besides this, Hiyuki also performs the sacred Kagura dance within her Resonator showcase, with both types, the slower Mai and the more energetic Odori, being displayed. I'm sure there are more little parallels in regards to shrines and shrine maidens, but I'm not fully informed in this area, so make sure to let me know in the comments if I miss anything. One of the things you may notice when you're having a look around Hiyuki's kit is that one thing that keeps popping up is Iai and the Iai stance. As may not surprise you if you're watching this video, this is a reference to a real martial art or blade work style called Iai, Iaijutsu, or Iaido. Something you probably have actually seen already, but just didn't know the name of. It's that thing where oftentimes katanas are drawn to strike straight out of the sheath, ending an engagement in a single strike before the sword is whipped back into position. You can actually see that not only within her combat animations, but every single cutscene that she's been in, Hiyuki is effectively practicing Iaijutsu or Iaido, striking from the sheath before whipping it and sending it back into the sheath, something that we all saw, for example, for the first time, when she assisted Yu and Lucilla within 3.2. However, beyond aesthetics, Hiyuki's reference to this also rolls into her gameplay rotation. A critical part of Hiyuki's moveset is ulting and then using Frost Heart stacks to enter into the Iai stance, which is a stance that stands ready to draw the sword. Afterward, clicking basic attack will let her cast Iai at the cost of 100 stacks of Frost Heart, allowing her to exercise the process of Iai that we just described. Iaido, which is split into 4 different stances: the drawing of the sword in the first cut, then a downward cut, the shiburi or shaking of the blood off the blade, and finally returning the blade to the sheath, explicitly named in Hiyuki's kit, just being summarized in the stances, but is something that is depicted visually every time Hiyuki performs Iaido within her Iai stance. If I'm not mistaken, this is the only time when the 4 stances are completed, because every other time Hiyuki doesn't strike twice, meaning it's Iaijutsu rather than the 4-step Iaido. This can be seen, for example, when she ends her ultimate. As you can see, she skips the second downward slash. As a final note, I think this is pretty obvious, but Hiyuki's use of Iaido also matches her use of a katana. While Hiyuki actually uses a lot of other weapons, such as a bow and dual short swords, she only uses Iaido with the katana. This is due to the fact that the katana has a slight curvature, which makes it draw faster and also makes it very suitable for the first slash straight out of the sheath, which is part of the Iaido. One of the things you may have noticed within Hiyuki's story is that her familiar takes the form of an origami bird, something that of course has a place within Japanese culture. Besides the familiar being a guide and helpful aid for Star Torch Academy in guiding people lost in the snow and void, it also seems to be inspired by the paper crane, which symbolizes peace and good fortune as positive omens. While Hiyuki's familiar does not exactly resemble the usual origami crane, being more akin to a dove, the reason why I think the origami crane is relevant is due to the name of Hiyuki's 5th resonance chain, Vessel of Thousand Wishes. Naturally, this links to Hiyuki's role as a Miko of Flaming Sakura, granting the people's wishes at the cost of their life. However, this line is actually also a reference to the practice of Senbazuru, or 1,000 paper cranes. While this practice is actually derived from ancient folklore, it was heavily popularized by a little girl who survived the atom bomb dropped on Hiroshima. While in hospital dying of cancer, she attempted to complete the Senbazuru, but died of leukemia before she reached 1,000 cranes. I find this reference and the implication of how heavy wishes can be to be perfect for a character like Hiyuki, whose granting of wishes comes at the cost of her life. For your birthday, if you pick Hiyuki's gift for example, she will give you nothing but a piece of paper. She will grant any wish that is written on it. with the same dedication that she is trying to make the other wish, her life's purpose, true. On the topic of resonance chains, it may not surprise you that Hiyuki, being the most powerful Miko of Shinohara, would at least have a little symbolic reference to her homeland. Shinohara, a shortened version of Ashihara no Nakatsukuni, comes from Japanese culture, meaning the middle land of reed beds. Within Japanese mythology, it is a middle world inhabited by humans, in between heaven and hell, and was named as such because the Nihon Shoki and the earlier Kajiki described Japan as a swampy land full of reed beds. While we don't know much more about what the name of Shinohara could infer about the country and Wuthering Waves, besides it being probably ripe with Japanese mythology and symbolism, as seen with figures like Zashiki Watashi, and the unknown Onryo like Fredodian in Hiyuki's future, one thing that is easy to miss is that Hiyuki's fourth resonance chain, like reeds on tides, is a reference to her homeland, the Shinohara. With that, we have come to an end with Hiyuki's references and symbolism. If I missed anything, please make sure to let me know in the comments, as I'm not the biggest expert in Japanese culture or linguistics. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe or support me by chucking me a donation in the comments, maybe even becoming a channel member. I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you all in the next one.